Empires do not collapse the way movies show it. There is no single day when the lights go out and history ends. The real collapse begins years earlier, quietly, when the system still appears strong on the surface. Here's what nobody tells you. The most dangerous phase is not chaos. It's stability that no longer works. And that is why comparisons between the Soviet Union in 1989, 1991, and the United States in the late 2020s make so many people uncomfortable. This is where the pattern begins. In 1989, the Soviet Union still had nuclear parity, a vast military, and formal control over 1/6 of the Earth's landmass. On paper, it was a superpower. In reality, the internal mechanisms that made it function were already failing. Productivity had stagnated for more than a decade. Oil prices, which funded much of the Soviet state, had collapsed in the mid-1980s. Trust in institutions was eroding, but the system still operated, just barely. Everyone thought they had time. They didn't. Here's why this matters. Large systems don't break when resources run out. They break when coordination fails. By the late 1980s, Soviet factories met quotas that no longer reflected real demand. Prices were fixed, but shortages spread. Money existed, goods didn't. Not scarcity. Distortion. This wasn't a collapse yet. It was a signal. A signal most people misunderstood. Let me show you exactly how it unfolded. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev launched perestroika and glasnost, reforms meant to modernize the economy and restore legitimacy. Instead, they exposed how fragile the system had become. Once information flowed more freely, citizens realized the gap between official narratives and lived reality was massive. By 1989, strikes swept through coal regions. In 1990, republics began asserting sovereignty. The center still existed. Its authority did not. At first, it looked like a reform era. Then the bill arrived. Government revenues fell while obligations stayed fixed. The ruble remained officially stable, but parallel markets told a different story. Inflation surged unofficially before it was ever admitted. Here's the mechanism. When trust collapses, money stops behaving. People hoard goods, not currency. Systems that rely on obedience suddenly discover they have none, not ideology. Incentives. That was the real collapse point. By 1991, elites were no longer aligned with the system's survival. Regional leaders saw exit as safer than loyalty. The failed August coup didn't destroy the Soviet Union. It revealed that no one was willing to defend it. Collapse didn't arrive as violence first. It arrived as refusal. Now here's the dangerous comparison. Some analysts suggest that modern America is not experiencing the same ideology, the same structure, or the same global position, but may be entering a familiar stage of systemic strain. Not collapse. A phase. Debt levels exceed 120% of GDP. Institutional trust surveys show historic lows. Political polarization has hardened into parallel realities. The system still functions. That's the point. Here's the trap. People assume strength equals resilience. It doesn't. Resilience comes from adaptability and legitimacy. When legitimacy erodes, systems rely more heavily on force, bureaucracy, and financial engineering. That works until it doesn't. The Soviet Union didn't fail because it was weak. It failed because it couldn't change fast enough without breaking itself. The danger wasn't what they saw. It was what they ignored. And the unresolved question isn't whether America will collapse. It's whether recognizing a familiar pattern early allows a different ending, or whether late-stage empires all face the same narrowing set of choices. The final phase never announces itself as an ending. It presents itself as a choice. That was true in 1990, and some analysts suggest it may be true again in the years ahead. After the failed August 1991 coup, the Soviet Union technically still existed. Ministries met, flags flew, laws remained on paper. But the system had crossed an invisible line. Authority without belief is just theater. And once that belief evaporated, the outcome was no longer negotiable. Here's what nobody tells you. Collapse is rarely caused by the public. It's triggered when elites stop coordinating. By late 1991, Soviet Republic leaders understood something the population hadn't fully processed yet. The center could no longer enforce outcomes. Not because it lacked weapons. Because it lacked legitimacy. The moment coordination failed, fragmentation accelerated. The Soviet Union didn't fall apart. It opted out of itself. This is where the pattern repeats. Large systems survive stress for long periods by absorbing contradictions. Debt replaces growth. Narratives replace results. Bureaucracy replaces trust. That can last for years, sometimes decades. But when pressures stack, economic, political, cultural, the system enters a narrow corridor where outcomes become constrained. Not collapse or survival. Adjustment or fracture. Let me show you exactly how this applies conditionally to the United States. Some economists argue that America is approaching a similar corridor, not because it mirrors the Soviet system, but because it shares late-stage characteristics common to complex empires. High debt serviced by confidence rather than surplus. Institutional legitimacy contested rather than assumed. Policy paralysis disguised as stability. None of this guarantees failure. But it does shape probabilities. Here's the mechanism. Modern systems depend on trust layers. Trust in money, trust in governance, trust in shared rules. When one layer weakens, others compensate. When multiple layers weaken simultaneously, stress multiplies. Analysts suggest that between 2027 and 2029, the United States may face such a convergence, not as a single crisis, but as overlapping pressures. Fiscal constraints, electoral legitimacy disputes, global power rebalancing, each manageable alone. Dangerous together, not usser, not America. Pattern. That distinction matters. The Soviet Union lacked adaptive market mechanisms and decentralized innovation. The United States still has both. That difference expands the outcome set. One scenario indicates a managed transition, slower growth, fiscal reform, institutional recalibration, and gradual legitimacy repair. Painful, but stabilizing. Another scenario suggests an internal reset, sharper shocks followed by structural changes in governance, monetary policy, and global posture. Disruptive, but survivable. Then there is the hard break scenario, still conditional. This would not look like tanks in the streets. It would look like refusal. States challenging federal authority. Markets pricing political risk domestically. Capital demanding higher premiums. Governance functioning unevenly across regions. Not collapse. Fragmentation. The Soviet Union didn't disappear overnight. It hollowed out until the label no longer matched reality. Here's the trap. People look for drama. Systems dissolve through boredom, exhaustion, and disengagement. By the time outcomes feel obvious, leverage is gone. Recognition doesn't prevent the pattern, but it can change who adapts fastest. Late-stage empires don't reward loyalty. They reward flexibility. Here's why this matters. History doesn't repeat because people are foolish. It repeats because structures incentivize the same behaviors under pressure. The question isn't whether America is the next usser. That's the wrong comparison. The real question is whether modern systems can recognize late-stage signals early enough to bend instead of break. Because once coordination fails, once legitimacy drains, once exit feels safer than reform, the ending isn't written by ideology or intention. It's written by incentives. And by then, the fate isn't sudden. It's already sealed, quietly, structurally, and without ceremony.